So this is the third plenary session in which the topic that we are discussing is impact of COVID-19 pandemic on innovation in business models, technologies, and IP. I would just like to confirm that all my panelists are on. And good afternoon. I think all of us are reasonably visible and audible. That's important for our audience. And I would also like to, before I start, wish you all a good evening, and also hope that all of you are taking good care of your health. And those of you who are turning around to my age are getting yourself vaccinated. So the topic that we have today deals with innovation, which, as you know, comprises a product of two elements: invention and commercialization. It's a product; it's not a sum, for the simple reason that without a good idea, there is no innovation, and without the commercialization, there is no innovation. So because of the necessity of both the products, both the elements in innovation, that is the reason why it is a product and not a sum of the two. Which means we must have circumstances where ideas are generated on a continuous basis, and we must have circumstances or an environment in which commercialization can take place. And that's particularly important because when you talk about commercialization of an idea, if you're talking about, let's say, manufacturing a physical product, like, let's say, a carburetor of a car, you need a factory, you need maybe a laboratory to do the testing, you need samples to be made, you need to procure raw material from somewhere, you need to procure the packaging for that product, you need to hire employees, you need to manufacture the goods and transport them, you need to sell them at a retail end. And normally, all this, which comprises the commercialization element of innovation, all of this in the traditional world that we were used to for the past several decades, depending upon what our age is, had a physicality, a physical element. You needed to have a physical factory, physical employees, etc., etc. And of course, the internet came as another medium and enabled us to develop the internet-related things, mainly information and education and communications, and thereafter lots of research, and sometimes, of course, the passage or delivery of goods which could pass through wires, like books and films and music could pass through wires. But otherwise, even if it was an e-commerce concept, there was always a combination of placing an order on an e-commerce site and getting goods physically delivered. So there was always a physical element. So there are very few businesses earlier which were purely confined, apart from education and information or communications, which were purely confined to the internet. And so the fact that now what the pandemic has done is to hit us on the physical plane. And if it has hit us on the physical plane, what has that done to innovation? Innovation in business models, technologies, and intellectual property. I think it's been said repeatedly that of these two elements of idea generation and commercialization, for innovation, commercialization is the more important of the two. And that may be kept in mind. I would pose certain key questions which the panelists will today try and address and answer, and we can have a discussion on those. First, for example, have the number of patent applications, are they increasing? Are they increasing in certain sectors? Maybe in healthcare, or maybe in telecom, or maybe in certain, perhaps, I'm not sure. What about certain other fields? How are they going up? Are they going up in India? Are they going up in the European community? That's something that one of our speakers will certainly look at in some amount of detail. Second, financial support is required for converting any product into a commercial product. Is that financial support going up or drying up? The financial institutions, lending organizations, etc. How is that going? And is that supporting innovation? Then time. Various processes require time. Some are taking longer, some are taking shorter. Which are those processes which are being done quicker now as a result of the pandemic, and which of them are taking longer? That's another thing that we will examine. Then, are new products actually coming out on the market? So if you see the last 1.5 years, or since March 2020, 1 year, I guess, what is the rate at which new products have come out, or what is the kind of new internet or online concepts that have been developed? I think Kavitha Gupta will be looking at some of those areas of how customers are now moving from boxes to the cloud, and what are the new kinds of cloud offerings that are being made by companies. Then you also require a technical manpower for an innovation, which means the technical skill sets, are they increasing? What about education? Technical education, is it going up, or as a result of the pandemic, has that been badly affected? Work from home is a new concept. Remote working, virtual hearings in court, now with physical hearings having been resumed to some extent, hybrid hearings. How are they performing? Do they work? And vis-a-vis physical hearings, what are their advantages or disadvantages? There's a lot of learning in the last 1 year that we've got on that front, particularly as practicing lawyers appearing every day in virtual court and contrasting those with physical court, now going into virtual hybrid court. We've acquired a lot of knowledge about the deficiencies and the advantages there. And we could discuss that if we are given the time. Harvard Business Review reported that the records are indicating a general increase in productivity. How true is that in India? We'll also look at that. So the IP licensing area, has that been affected in a negative way? Are companies trying to use COVID to get out of contracts? Are they trying to use the force majeure and other clauses as an exit route? China, it appears that 30%, there has been a 30% fall in the imports from China as a part of our broader Atmanirbhar Bharat scheme and program. There is less of a dependence on China. There are businesses that have suffered, and there are businesses that have prospered. Businesses that have suffered are the obvious ones of transportation and tourism and hospitality, etc. And businesses that have prospered, obviously, are the internet-related businesses, or 3D printing, where you can sit in your home and produce something, or the increase in scientific publications. And that has meant that research has been faster, because it is reported that there has been new forms of scientific communication and exchange of data, of scientific data, as a result of which there is research has been demonstrably faster. And what can be better proof of it than the fact that we've had viruses in 1 year's time, which is fantastic, or less than 1 year's time, which was something almost unbelievable. On the social level, you have going to your offices and going to courts and traveling around in the city. You don't do that, or at least you don't do it on that regular basis. So there's saving off a lot of travel time, and there's less pollution. Environmentally, life is cleaner. Those appear to be some very positive outcomes. Then you'd ask, how has that affected family life? Family life has become bonds have become much stronger, but then some would argue that you spend too much of time with your wife. There's going to be some problems there. So, people say, oh, people are much healthier because they're fitter, they're able to exercise, they're able to control their diet. That's one aspect. The other aspect is some people were eating more, and some people were better fed by their families and were able to put on weight. Of course, I've lost weight. That's a good thing, which I can report. And of course, mental health, the depression of staying at home has broken down a lot of people, but by and large, on spirituality, people say people have turned to spirituality. Some say, oh, people have turned to pornography because they spend so much more time at home looking at the internet. So there are these contrasting aspects, and we'll have a very good panel today to discuss these. So I'm going to start with Richa. Richa Pandey, 19 years of experience as a very well-known IP lawyer, having worked with top law firm Remfry and Sagar for 10 years, and thereafter now with Krishna and Saurastri as a partner heading their Delhi office, with experience of prosecution, litigation, and of course extensive speaking assignments all over the world in various fora and associations, and now is also the president of LES India. So Richa will be talking about the patent filing, to an extent education, which I spoke about, remote working, and also the healthcare system. Richa.
Thank you so much, sir. That really makes me sound a lot nicer than I actually am. Good evening, everyone. I was generally thinking while Mr. Anand was talking, that what is the commonality between jet engine and penicillin? It was the Second World War. The nuclear age and computers, same applies to them. So all these developments, which laid the foundation for technological enhancement of human society for the remainder of the century, actually came in the face of adversities. So pandemics too have caused crisis throughout human history. It was the bubonic plague, cholera, smallpox. Smallpox was our latest achievement, where finally we could eradicate smallpox. And I think the year was 1979, when after that WHO decided that we will not be vaccinating for smallpox again. But these all resulted in best public health practices, which have benefited all succeeding generations. And like Mr. Anand has already said, COVID-19 has actually thrust us into a new worldwide crisis. But like every other crisis, we have been able to achieve certain things We have lost a lot of things. But while illness and death rate, we have seen that there has been a daily climb, macroeconomy has been continuously falling. But then again, necessity can serve as the mother of invention again. Once again, crisis can serve as catalyst for innovations that will lay foundations for a better future. I would just be talking about a few industries and few business areas, practices, which we encounter day to day. The first, I think, would be healthcare. Being a developing country, it has been difficult for Indians to get access to healthcare at any given point in time, especially in remote villages. Actually, why say remote? In villages. Except for a lot of big cities, it's been very difficult to get access to medicine and to decent care providers and to decent treatments. So this has been an entire industry which has been a contact-driven practice. Also because we always tend to have a one-to-one with the doctor. In our entire Bollywood industry, it's always the doctor who's equated with God. So it is very difficult for us to analyze and to understand that this is one industry which can be AI specific, or this can be industry which can actually run virtually. But it has been shown that it can be done, and COVID showed us that. Patients, while they need in-person contact with care providers, but here, these were challenging times, there were constraints, and people did without it. So we have seen firms developing and experimenting with much more radical risk mitigation technologies. They have developed new product and processes that mitigate contagion risk. For example, in China, robots have been designed to deliver medicines, meals, to collect bed sheets and rubbish in hospitals, which means that the human race somewhere is being a little more protected. Of course, the e-commerce giant JD developed a drone program so that it dropped parcels, it sprayed disinfectants, and smart helmets can identify anyone with fever within a 5-meter radius. So maximizing the virtualization of healthcare will be the key to achieving scalable mitigation. And for this, the all-important human connection must also be delivered. We can see telemedicine happening, we will see chatbots happening, we will see hospital-at-home admissions happening. It is very interesting to note with our vaccination program, all you need to do is register prior, and then you can get your vaccination done the next day. In fact, there is a very well-known author, I think Mr. Anand is also very fond of him, Yuval Noah Harari, and he wrote in his Lessons for the 21st Centuries that AI doctors would provide far better and cheaper healthcare for billions of people, particularly for those who currently receive no healthcare at all. So a poor villager in an underdeveloped country might come to enjoy far better healthcare via their smartphone than the richest person in the world gets today. Possibly he did not know that this is going to come true so quickly. Somehow COVID has just changed that. We thought that this will happen tomorrow, but COVID brought that tomorrow to today. And today we are actually living in something similar. So we are already living in the day after. Now we'll have to learn to define, to practice a new paradigm for social presence and engagement. Then we talk about work from home. Personally, I'm a very bad person to work from home. I lack the essential discipline for working from home. But for a lot of people, it made a lot of sense because business travel reduced to a minimum. Hot desking started happening at your kitchen table. There were no lost hours in the traffic, no environmental emissions due to gridlocked traffic. And honestly, a lot of people have shown that employees have been more productive when they have worked from home. They've also been able to work more hours without sacrificing their personal work-life balance, which is a win-win in all the situations. Now, I think these are going to become permanent fixtures of the corporate landscape. Being successful will require innovation to construct them with virtualization as a strength for employees and for companies both. But I believe that this is one structure which has come to stay. Also, they have freed us from the autocracy of location. So when companies operate in a virtualized space, they have access to employment to people located anywhere in the world. So now working remotely, you can work for US here as long as you're not bothered with the daylight hours. You can work anywhere. So under this entire social distancing thing, work from home came alive. Also, I think flip side of this is investors also will not be just shopping in their home markets. They will also be shopping in markets which are actually only accessible virtually. And it is not a problem because virtually you can have access to money, you can have access to knowledge, you can have access to each and every portion. So there is no reason why an investor would not be doing that. So while it represents a tremendous economic shock and burden, however, I think the focus has shifted. It is now towards health and safety risks, while we are also trying to accommodate the economic activity. They say that uncertain times are wellsprings of opportunity, and I think this is great opportunity. I was actually going through the European Patent Office annual report on the European patent applications which have been filed in 2020. Unfortunately, India does not have anything like that. I'm sorry. India does not have the report as of today. So I was left to, base my base my judgment on what has been done in EPO. The Corona year has obviously left its mark. It has led to fewer inventions. There is no doubt about it. This is basically true for the total number of European applications. In 2019, while the applications were up by about 4%, there has been a 0.7% decline in 2020. However, the two strongest areas, which we obviously should have expected, are medical technology and digital communication. Well, I think at this stage one can think, oh, that went well. That sounds all right. But there has been a decline in economic output. I don't really know about a lot of other countries, but Germany, the economy shrank by about 5% in 2020 during Corona crisis. So if you look more closely at the EPO statistics, you will find the reflection of this entire shrunken economy. US and EP have made a lot less inventions than the Eastern countries. You will find suddenly China and South Korea have replaced, or at least they have climbed up a couple of rungs. So while USA is still in the first place with close to about 45,000 applications, but this is still 4% less than in 2019. Germany is in second place. Japan is in the third. China is in the fourth place. And the fifth place is occupied by France, and South Korea has actually climbed up to the sixth place. So if we look at EPO statistics, what we realize is that while US and EP have shrunk, this has been the gain of China and South Korea. So the US, as I said, has made 4% lesser patents applications, Germany 3% fewer, and in fact, Netherlands had made even fewer, so that's about 9%. China, on the other hand, made about 10% more in 2020, and South Korea about 9% more. So that has seen a percentage growth as far as East is concerned. There has been also considerable growth in the Middle East. So Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar have actually grown their patent portfolios, which I think is a good idea, because eventually we are looking at a world which is all inclusive. But these are in terms of absolute filing numbers. So there are certain other EPO statistics. So in Finland, there has been an increase. Ireland has seen an increase. France has seen an increase. Poland has seen an increase. Slovenia and Estonia have seen an increase. So these are attracting attention with increases in EPO patent applications, but small but absolute applications numbers. because I think one of the reason is because Poland is particularly strong in gaming production. And Estonia is known as the digital pioneer of Europe anyway, as is Sweden. So this could be one of the reasons why these have grown. As far as the targeted establishment is concerned, I think 5G would lead to more patent applications in 2021. And we can see even in LES, in other world forums, we can see that 5G is garnering a lot of interest, a lot of progressive automation of companies. This is all which has been garnering a lot of interest. So we will possibly see some more changes there. With regard to other technologies, I would say digital and automation technologies are not common. The crisis led to drastic changes in the interaction with consumers. In education, of course, we've seen teachers from elementary schools to university. They transformed content and delivered it online or through phones, which must have been very, very tough. Retailers started to license Amazon's Just Walk Out technology that combines computer vision and AI to bill customers directly as they walk out of the store with no checkout required. Many cultural industries, you see museums, galleries, cinemas, concert halls, musicians, artists, they found means to create, perform, and connect with their audience through online platforms. This actually brought a lot of appreciated comfort to people who were confined in their homes. Every few years, actually, just to wind up, I would say that every few years we are alarmed by the outbreak of some potential new plague. SARS happened in 2002-03, bird flu in 2005, swine flu in 2009-10, Ebola in 2014. But thanks to efficient countermeasures, these incidents have so far resulted in a comparatively small number of victims. Even the tragedy of AIDS, which was supposed to be the greatest medical tragedy, failure of last few decades. So it's, sign of progress. And once the medical community became aware of the mysterious new plague, it took scientists just 2 years to identify it, understand how the virus spreads, and suggest effective ways to slow down the pandemic. The COVID-19 has also profoundly influenced the lives of most of the people on the planet. It has changed daily activities. Just a walk in the park is perceived very different now. And the same is true for businesses. But mankind has always been very resilient. And that is the important thing about us. I mean, apart from all the other people who have taken different platforms to bring forth their arguments, this is another very important platform where we are at least, interacting virtually, meeting each other, talking to each other without actually moving out from our houses. So I think this is cheers to resilience. I'm sure we'll be able to overcome this. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Richa. That was fabulous. I'd just like to add a point or two on working from home. We had a very interesting situation when we were in an IPAB hearing, and there was a lady who was attending the hearing, but then she probably was waiting for her matters, so she got a little uneasy and thought maybe she'd go prepare a cup of tea, and she left and the seat was empty. And then two of her children kind of whispered to each other and naughtily walked up to the computer and started playing. The whole court was watching while they were playing on the computer. And when the mother came, she was absolutely shocked. And obviously the natural thing was to close the computer quickly rather than deal with that shock. And that's been happening to a lot of people, with dogs barking, coming in, the children coming and sitting on the desk and punching in the buttons of the computer. So those kind of experiences have of course made the experience a very real one, and added, I guess, a little soul to our working. The other thing, the opportunity-wise, yesterday I was appearing in the Karnataka High Court. Then you could appear in any other High Court. Anybody from any part of the country could appear in the Delhi High Court. People from my Chennai office have been appearing with me. The 2 days ago in the Delhi High Court. So the opportunities to appear anywhere. Clients from all over the world have been, although it's been midnight there, deep hours of the night, but they've been appearing, hearing the matters, and feeling delighted about the fact that the arguments went off well or had a much better interaction between client and attorney because of that physical presence, where they could actually see what the judge meant, what he was saying, rather than get some letter where they do a lot of visualization. Talking of China and the greater inventions, if you see 5G, the way Huawei or Korea, the way LG and Samsung patents have gone up like that in 5G, it's amazing. And you'd often wonder why? What is it that they are doing right? And that question I've asked about for several decades. And I really, after a while, you wonder, is it a fight worth even considering? Or have we been completely overtaken on that front? I believe not. I believe that there's a lot of state sponsorship there, and it's the brilliance of our minds here is unmatched. And with a little policy changes and a little connects here and there, there's so much more that we can achieve. That message of innovation really matters, and we need it. That message has got to go down from top to bottom. And that's very, very important, because sometimes at the very top, people who matter, people who are, opinion leaders, they seem to be vacillating between two views, between costing and between we've got to think of everybody and all that. That's all very good, but innovation matters, and innovation does great for the weaker sections, because a smaller company can achieve to skyrocket and take a double promotion as opposed to a large giant who will find it difficult to move around. So with those observations, I'm now going to introduce Kavitha. Kavitha is the Senior Corporate Counsel of Juniper Networks India, and she's also covering India and Southeast Asia, and has 20 years of experience in technology and an extensive experience in, for example, assisting their company in acquiring AI-related businesses. And she will be speaking on several aspects, including the impact of the pandemic on IP licensing, and particularly dealing with force majeure type clauses on concepts like material adverse impact and all that. And of course, she will also talk about the new cloud offerings and other new products which have kind of come to life by virtue of the pandemic, and some innovative acquisitions made by their company during the pandemic. So, Kavitha. Kavitha, you're on mute.
This always happens with me, Pravin, but thanks again for the kind introduction. I just said, I will first start with cloud offering. I think global companies, especially telcos, are facing rapid changes in their business needs, and the pandemic has further compelled them to face newer changes. Thankfully, telcos these days are better prepared, as most critical operation happen conveniently over the cloud, and also are very important to be connected. So it is also clear that 5G, cloud, and edge computing are the three inextricably linked technologies that significantly improve the performance of telecom applications and enable huge amount of data to be processed in real time. Today, service providers are embracing telco cloud to deliver 5G network services. As rightly mentioned to you, that there have been an increase in patent filing and also to realize the new revenue. 5G is definitely not a standalone technology. It's closely intertwined with cloud and AI, both of which are driving service providers the required business transformation in the new decade. The journey to the cloud plus 5G and AI era will be different for every service provider, and by no means it will be an easy change. Many companies are now on a mission to bring the cloud, 5G and AI to the reality to its customer for a better experience. I've seen many companies are emphasizing on the importance of keeping the world connected. The transformational forces that are already in play prior to the pandemic has actually escalated after the pandemic, and today's enterprises are embracing cloud as its first IT strategy. The three computing models, that is the cloud, edge, and hybrid, will actually build innovative use cases for the future 5G deployments, where I see that a lot of patent works is happening, and the industry is increasingly seeing more value in adopting a cloud approach to ensure business continuity across entire operation. While 5G is still few years away from being implemented in India, one of the key factors that will fuel this mass adoption is the rapid shift towards cloud and as well as artificial intelligence. Both needs to go hand in hand in order to make 5G a reality and fulfill the telco and enterprise transformation journey. So this was on the cloud innovation. I would also like to touch on the impact of COVID that I've seen on IT, on IP contracts. The pandemic has disrupted industry on a large scale, and its effects are likely to be significant and long-lasting. And we have all noticed that in response to the lockdowns order in the country, businesses have been closing, the sales of non-essential goods and services are declining, and many parties they find themselves unable to meet their contractual obligations or even incapable of receiving any goods or services for which they have contracted. Such businesses are now looking into the contract in search of provision that might help them, against breaches of contract. But these, and I would be touching upon the IP licenses. These licenses often contain agreements with sales minimum or royalty agreement that may be difficult to meet during this time of interrupted business and sale. So the licensee and the licensor both have options under the common licenses to either enforce or excuse due to COVID-19. If the contract imposes a performance obligation, it also specifies a remedy for failure to perform. So if so, the contractual remedy likely applies even in the case of COVID-19. This is because courts are inclined to defer to remedies that parties negotiate for themselves regarding resolution of any anticipated performance problem. So many licenses contain force majeure clause, being a boilerplate clause that expressly excuse such non-performance. If the contract includes a force majeure provision, it is again important to examine what performance does the force majeure clause apply to. It's important to evaluate whether the force majeure clause applies to the type of breach being contemplated. Some provisions allow a party to terminate the contract, while others suspend the performance during the force majeure event. So even if the some of the contracts may not contain cover the pandemic, and if the contract fails to supply guidance on how to respond to a breach of performance occasioned by an extreme unforeseen event like the COVID-19 outbreak, businesses may be still able to rely on the equitable doctrines of impossibility of frustration of purpose. Apart from these contractual issues, I think the COVID-19 has posed other issues for IP licenses, like particularly the potential bankruptcy and pledges of non-enforcement of IP rights. It is forecasted that the economic complication related to COVID may cause many bankruptcy in US and other countries. So these bankruptcies could be licensee or even the licensor of IP rights. In event if the bankruptcy is of a licensor, the IP license might be rejected by the licensor, leading the licensee to either force compliances or pursue a breach. On the other hand, if a licensee declares a bankruptcy, some IP licenses may contain the clauses that might attempt an automatic termination of IP rights. Again, this needs to be evaluated on case-to-case basis. Another important consideration is whether any company chooses to enforce IP rights during the pandemic to the extent they are related to the needed products to treat the COVID-19 pandemic, that is the compulsory licenses. Many companies like India and US have the abilities to forcibly license IP need to a crisis such as pandemic. So if any company refuses to license or uses IP rights to interfere with treatment options, they may find themselves forced to license. Another important main areas of deal that I came across was the which was mainly affected by the pandemic are the clauses on the material adverse effect and the material adverse change, which is popularly known as MAE and MAC. So I'm sure a lot of M&A lawyers is aware of these clauses. So I think last year we have seen high-profile cases wherein one party to a deal tried to get out of the transaction by citing MAE or MAC clause. One of the, I think, the most noteworthy example is the dispute between Tiffany and Louis Vuitton. Louis Vuitton argued to buy Tiffany for 16.2 billion. I think it was in end of November, end of 2019. But due to the pandemic, they said that it wouldn't be able to go through the transaction. Then Tiffany sued LV, accusing it of unlawfully using the pandemic to try to avoid completing the deal. On the other hand, Louis Vuitton filed a lawsuit, and one of the issues at hand was whether the economic effect of the pandemic on Tiffany business constituted MAE, as it was not able to fulfill its obligations and the sales. So though ultimately the company settled out of the court, and I believe they settled with a revised, I think, of 15.8 billion merger. That was what it was reported. I think the lessons that we all learned was, when looking to determine whether a MAC clause has been breached, a court would likely assess whether the adverse change in question is material to the transaction as a whole and over a substantial period of time. Like a temporary condition that exists during a short period won't cut it out. Nor will the risk of a MAC be grounds to trigger the MAC. The MAC must have actually occurred. I think from a policy perspective, court will look to preserve the economic substance of agreements in light of the potential consequences to the economy of allowing the unraveling of commerce.
Thanks a lot, Kavitha. So with that, I come to my third panelist, Nirupam. Nirupam Srivastava is the Vice President, Strategy and AI of Hero Corporation or Corporate Services Private Limited, and has had a tremendous experience of working with different models of different technologies, and will share with us some of his experiences.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Anand, and thanks for all the fellow panelists to have set in a context which is there. So what I will do is I will basically walk you through the journey which we covered when the pandemic started and what steps we took, and I will again look at the challenges that we faced as well as the innovation that we did either on the business model, on the technologies, or on the IP side. I will also share a quick my screen so that the pointers are clearly available. So I hope you all can see the screen. So when the pandemic started, and as a corporate citizen with social responsibility, the task squarely fell on us that how, as an industry, we can help the society and the government to enable to make sure that we are fighting fit. We are taking up the challenges that the pandemic cast on us. So in that scenario, I mean, just putting a goal. So our goal was essentially to support the state and society in overcoming this unknown enemy, because this was something which was relatively new for us, and so unknown to us. We don't know how the what the real effect would be. So first was essentially to know the enemy, which is the detection, prevention, protection, cure, and then also making sure the economic engine has the least impact because of this enemy. But what really happened is that we realized, and as we all have seen during the last 1 year, this enemy is a moving target. This is not something which is a static one. So, and still is a moving target. So we haven't really figured that out completely. So what we did essentially in terms of reality outcomes, we overcame various shortages due to disruption in supply chain. We have a reasonable economic recovery, and we hope it continues. What it has also done is a significant amount of boost in our self-confidence as a country, as a society, that we can, with the government, with the industry, with the academia, with the legal fraternity, with the judicial system, that we can come together and take on any challenge of this nature. And again, this has been a challenge of very, very significant nature. And also it has built in a lot of positive image of India as a solution orientation and a solution provider to the world that India has come, whether it was HCQS or whether it's now Covishield. And so the biggest challenge, another, is plan. So the biggest challenge of this, or biggest situation this has created, is it actually put all the plans to the side. Because initially we said 15-day lockdown, then we said 40-day lockdown, then we said we don't know, it's continuing, and then we said no, let's unlock it, and unlock 1, unlock 2, unlock 3, unlock 4. So this is something which is very, very dynamic. So a lot of plans have fallen aside, and that has been our experience also. But we also have been able to do a lot of things even when the plans were falling aside. Like we became self-sufficient in development of PPEs, equipment, test kits, vaccines also now to some extent. And also these are success stories, but there have been a lot of experimentation, I would say. Lot of projects had to be abandoned. Lot of projects had a limited utility. So you were able to do something for that time, and then it sufficed, and then you have to close it down, because then you have a better technology or a better solution to take care of it. So this is another thing. So coming to the initial challenges, so with respect to the virus and the COVID, so we all know, the detection and spread has been still a mystery. We're still trying to figure out how it spreads, whether it's symptomatic. If it is symptomatic, what are the symptoms? And symptoms have been changing. If it is asymptomatic, then we have to figure out who are the super spreaders and who are the non-super spreaders, and what differentiates a super spreader from a non-super spreader. Testing in the beginning phase, we looked at what the kind of tests we should do. Of course, we had a big shortage initially of the testing kits, and it was kind of a rationed. But which tests, RT-PCR, antibody test, and then reliability and availability of these tests itself was a bit of a question, because, as I said earlier, it was rationed, and then how to make sure it reaches to the places which are a bit remote. So those questions have been there. Then we focused on prevention, because when we realized we do not have a medicine, we do not know what the issue is, let's try to prevent. And in the prevention, again, we had multitude of methods. So we talked about masks, again, social distancing, hand hygiene. Mr. Anand talked in the beginning of this session as well. Vaccination is one method of prevention. We also had some experiments like spraying disinfectants and chambers and all those things, which we had to then close down because they were not actually working and they were actually harmful. So again, experimentation out there. Then sourcing and development these methods, because we used to import PPE from China earlier. Then we started making it, and developing that technology, developing that supply chain from an industry perspective. Testing, because you have to be accreditation, N95 versus N99 mask, or even now we are actually not even bothered about what mask it is. Then testing of similarly PPE kits, so that it's really have a barrier. So we have again shortages around that systems, which government has been able to fill now with industry support. Newer technologies, which are sometimes better or sometimes which are just a jugaad version of it. We have seen that. And of course, educating the masses from not just a pandemic, but infodemic also, because a lot of fake news, fake messages going around. So, and then in terms of treatments, again, experimentation still continues. People look at antivirals like remdesivir, HCQS we supplied initially, ventilators, because when it realized that ventilators are required, so government and industry and academia came together, DRDO. So I was part of various CII groups which were working on this. In fact, our group was itself working on creating the local ventilators, or making most use of the existing ventilators that we have by having a multiple channel valve systems that also we developed using 3D printing. So a lot of experimentation, innovation happened. Also investing was a big place, because a lot of government came up with a model which IITs were doing some research and industry could invest in it. So that was very, very interesting. Coming to the three key elements of today's talk, which is business model, technology, and IP. So from a business model perspective, one thing which is very clear happened is the digitization. A lot of people have been talking of digitization but not really doing it. So this pandemic really forced it. One example is the digital marketing, social media marketing, online marketing, because you cannot go, you cannot travel. So that has become a very, very clear thing. The members have already talked about the course system. For example, initially I was with LexisNexis, and it had been a challenge because we had all these softwares and packages and tools, but it had been a challenge to get the judicial system or even the lawyers community to adopt them. But this pandemic made them take it forward, and now we have actually as what is called as one national bar. So a lawyer sitting in Mumbai can appear in Delhi High Court, and a Delhi lawyer can appear in Chennai High Court, and same way Chennai lawyer can appear in Supreme Court sitting at his home. So we have a one national bar due to this. And again, system is not perfect, but if we continued our push, and I see a lot of reaction coming from some of the bar associations which want to go physical again, which I think is again a bit of a territorial fight, not really on some firm grounds. Again, that's my opinion. So we have to continue this hybrid system, and it actually makes each of us more efficient, as we have talked about the time saves. Distribution method of working is again a big success. A lot of it we also see is adoption of artificial intelligence. Things like chatbots is one thing. So everybody's there. Call centers had a huge volume push. So how do you take care of a larger number of people moving online, for example, in banking space, in financial services space, so which cannot go to the branch now, but want solutions. So, chatbots have come in, digital marketing tools have come in. Same way in the entertainment space, you cannot go to a movie theater. So the OTT players had a field day actually. So Netflix or Prime or Z5 or any of these guys. So people had innovated models, which not that they were not there, but the kind of growth they have seen in this space. So business model is a key part. Technology is, from technology perspective, I see two major trends. One is what I call as go-to-market. So the go-to-market phase has squeezed a bit. So it's not that having a perfect technology is required, because, for example, let's look at the vaccines, or even when we were looking at ventilators. Even if technology is there, the question is not whether you can build it. The question is how fast you can build it, because this thing scales up very fast. As we see the peaks, and now we're calling a second wave now. So this has a high infection rate, and it peaks very fast, overwhelming the infrastructure that we have in terms of healthcare. So how do we bring it supply chain resilience to it? And the second part in technology is virtualization, like we are doing this conference right now. And cloud computing. And first thing, when this hit, most of the organizations in the IT sector immediately buffed up their systems and their employees. Those who did not have given laptops earlier to their employees actually gave laptops, and mobile became again a go-to place for education for school kids and tablets, etc. So a lot of virtualization has happened in terms of the technology place. And in terms of IP, what I see is focus on research has come in. Earlier it was focus on commercialization, but now people have realized that you cannot think that you will get something from some other country and that is end of it. So industry, academia, and government, all three have come together in this focus on research. And the last point I would put here is on the collaboration space. A lot of again, all these three people have realized that each of them alone cannot do it, so they need support from others, and a lot of collaboration is happening, and not just within the country but across the countries in terms of open sourcing and collaborating. For example, our vaccine, one of our vaccines is AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine, which is being manufactured. So a lot of collaboration is happening in this space. So that's mainly, I would sum up in terms of the key elements I see in this, and I kind of stop here, and again happy to take other discussion points as they come along.
Very interesting. That was fabulous, Nirupam. Just to kind of add a little to this, I remember when we started virtual courts for the first time on the 15th of April. We had a case last year, 15th April 20. That time the mood was that now because of this pandemic, the business is going to shut. There's going to be no work. And we were quite surprised that you could, one, join from anywhere, two, on any platform, on an iPad or on your smartphone, or on a laptop or on a desktop. Three, from the Supreme Court down to the District Court, all the high courts, the tribunals, all of them were using virtual court and the computer systems. And four, other processes like mediation, cross-examination, settlement discussions, all of them were happening on the virtual system. And you could argue and be heard all over the world, which means that in a sense you couldn't argue nonsense. There was a certain discipline that had to be added, and like you said, one national bar, the discipline when somebody tried to smoke a hookah, and you know how that went viral. So that some people learned quite early. They got hurt because they didn't switch on their mute button and spoke stuff that was then broadcast to the whole court. So people learned those things and those techniques as well. So discipline. People became digitally very, very adept. Judges and people even in their 60s and 70s became very adept. As you worked from your home with no one to help you with physical files, with books, you learned how to do file sharing, you learned how to go on Zoom and MS Teams and have meetings seamlessly. You learned when you have a connectivity issue, how to solve that. So everybody kind of got quite adept at, the computers, and that's.
Slide mode change कर दीजिए, share screen.
So this is when Mr. Agarwal forgot to put his phone on his system on mute. So this is what I meant. So cases-wise, we had a lot of cases relating to sanitizers and relating to masks. We had people making Louis Vuitton masks. You spoke about Tiffany and Louis Vuitton. The Louis Vuitton masks, and those cases came up before the court. Or you had a Himalaya drugs, somebody made a sanitizer fake. Then you had some very interesting cases, like you had the Budweiser case, where somebody came up with an advertisement that Budweiser's employees micturate in their beer. And we had to rush to court and get an injunction. And somebody came up with an advertisement on Corona beer. So they put their brand around in a circle and put Corona in the middle and put arrows and called it social distancing. In other words, stay away from Corona beer. So, of course, on behalf of Corona, we had to rush to court and get an injunction. Or you had catch, the Pulse of the Pulse catch spices in an advertisement, which was documented and all that, all nonsense, that Indian spices are made from cow dung and from cow urine. And they showed a couple of names, and Catch was one of them, who went to court and got an injunction. So you had a lot of these fake news and disparaging advertisements, and cybercrime went up to a great extent. And all this was as a result of what was happening on the internet. You actually had cases like ITC had a case where every couple of days, the person, after being injuncted in court, would just change from ITC Ashirwad 1 to ITC Ashirwad Services to ITC Ashirwad Franchise, and so on and so forth. We'd keep changing, and we'd keep getting injunctions till we actually asked the service provider to just block any kind of ITC-related domain names. So we've had these kind of very interesting experiences. We still have half an hour, Mr. Agarwal, isn't that right?
Yeah, and I request Mr. Nirupam to, if he is not sharing the screen, to restore back to, so that, otherwise your photo is getting a little bit distortion. So you are sharing the screen, so you can go back to the earlier position.
So I've done that. I can see properly all of them. Can you see?
Okay, maybe, yeah. We are able to see, but except your face. face to ठीक आसছে ना কিন্তু.
Let me kill this.
Yeah.
Is it okay now?
So there's a little bit of a distortion, but that's fine.
Okay, let me change. So I will try to do that. In one of the courts, what happened is the children had put the cat face, the what they call mask or something
That's
like
right.
that, and the lawyer was looking like a cat instead of his own picture. So probably something of that sort is happening here. We'll try to fix that.
So let's see now if we can go for a question answer.
Yes. So why don't we open it to questions? I think, is there some way in which we could see the question?
Yeah. So we have some questions. How digitalization and digitalization differences from each other? That's a question from Vijay Santiaju.
So I can go for that unless somebody else. So digitalization is basically you make physical stuff, which could be a form, which could be a piece of information, which could be a process, anything that you are doing, whether it's a sales order or a government record, you convert that into a digital format, which is in terms of a computer record. So that is a digitalization. But digitization is essentially when you improve the process itself, which is making maximum use of the digital assets you have, which could be like online transactions, okay, versus a physical transaction. So that is digitization. So that's in some instances, again, there are lots of various examples depending on the context. I don't know which context from you are coming from, but whether you look at industry, whether you look at commerce, there are hundreds of examples, and I'm sure fellow panelists could add on to that. But that's sum and substance is that you use digital medium to do things differently than what you have been used to doing physically. That's digitization. But if you are purely doing the same way but making that physical document into a digital document, then it's a digitalization. That's not really making use of the digital technology in the true sense.
All right.
We can take the next question, sir.
So we are looking for another question to come from the audience. So far, nothing such has come. So the panelists can, come out with some.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
So, Richa, would you like to talk a little about some of the experiences before the IPAB and before the Patent Office, and tell us how that experience has fared?
Well, though I miss the physical hearings, I think one of the things about human beings is that we like to interact. We like to meet people. We like to talk to people. Except for a few exceptions, this is how we function. So I did miss a lot of physical, meeting people. But it has been very smooth. It has been very, very smooth. Getting a link from patent office has been very easy. Of course, you were mentioning, sir, that you can have a hearing with Chennai patent office, with Delhi patent office, Calcutta patent office, Mumbai patent office, all in one day. So it's like everything is made short work of. IPAB also was functioning really, really well. I hope they continue to work, which is again something which we have in limbo. But otherwise, we found that patent interaction with patent office has been really nice. Another thing which I felt was very interesting, and the way it went, was the way we dealt with the pandemic, the way the patent office dealt with the pandemic, the way the courts dealt with the pandemic, the way you increased the limitation, you increased your timelines, and there was initially there was lack of clarity, but the moment you escalated it, clarity came. So that was something which was, I think it is worth applauding from the patent office side. They have been able to do that. Of course, I think a lot of them are also working from home. They were also working in different time zones. They were also working in different ways. But they have been able to do quite a commendable job, I would say.
Oh, excellent. I just wanted to...
Can I request Nirupam, if he has some experience or some case studies on the AI-related inventions, if some practical example if we have.
Oh yes, that's a good idea.
Sure. Sure. So what we did, actually, we did a couple of pilots at our end also. Both from, so we applied technology from two perspectives. One is the front end, which is the customer facing one. So the way customer is interacting with us. And the second is at the back end, where we have huge amount of data of large number of customers, and try and use analytics and AI on top of it to identify the patterns and trends, so that we can develop products which suit that particular customer or customer segment. So, on the first end, which is on the front end, what we have done is we leveraged AI for, as I mentioned in my slide also, we developed chatbots. So we and again, there are huge variety of chatbots, from simple, which gives you an option and asks you to select an option, which like an IVRS does on the telephone, to intelligent chatbots which understand what you are trying to look for, and even if you speak to them in Hindi, in English, they will understand your language without you having to actually type it in, and then they will convert it into in technical terms, in terms of entities and intentions, intent entities, and come up with an answer which is what you were looking for. So these kind of technologies are today available, and they are actually rapidly advancing. So today's with technologies like GPT-3 and again there are technologies from OpenAI and from Facebook AI, which are actually so advanced that they can write whole books. You give them content and they will, on any topic, they can write whole books and respond as naturally as a human person would. So that is possible, and that technology is available. So that is one part. Second is a lot of companies.
Is it a patented technology?
Sorry, say again?
Is it a patented technology?
So GPT is open source actually. It's part of OpenAI. It's a consortium-based development. Though BART is BERT is there, BERT, which is a Google owned technology, which is again in the similar space, but on the more close side. Again, they have their own collaborative space, but not really open in that sense. And same way in terms of the companies and even governments, for that matter, have huge amounts of data which they don't use. So there are lots of, again, analytic techniques and solutions available today, and even for smaller companies, which cannot afford these. There are cloud-based service providers today. So all Amazon, Google, Microsoft offer these technologies for a fraction of cost, which otherwise earlier would have costed millions and billions of dollars. So experimentation is possible. Of course, once you grow big, they will also charge big time. So it's not there's no free lunch, but one can experiment and build solutions around that. So that's where
I have a question. If you see the Nobel Prize winners from 1900 to 2000, the 100 years, they classified them into two groups. The ones in physics and chemistry. The chemistry ones were called the dogs, and the physics ones were called cats. They labeled them like that because their way of working. The dogs were the ones that kind of went out to the lab. They were outwards. Whereas the cat ones, the physics ones, were the ones who worked in their own room on equations and came up with various solutions and solved various problems. But on their own, they didn't need to go out and interact and experiment in a lab, etc. Now, that concept today would suggest that if you have the COVID reducing man's ability to go out to a lab and work with a team of people and experiment, then anything that involves a chemical solution, which would include pharmaceuticals and biotechnology, that would go down. And anything that involves a physics solution, such as electronics, where a lot of the patents and all are at a physics level, equation level, mathematics level, telecom patents, that would go up. Has that actually happened on account of the pandemic?
Yeah, may I come in? I think, Pravin, I have seen like there have been a lot of patents which has been granted, especially on machine learning and deep learning. And as you rightly said, there have been a lot of inventions, even from India as well. And yes, it is actually happening. And I think what I have seen is that the number of patents which is filed on machine learning and deep learning is more, especially for telecom, transportations, airline companies, compared to others. And as you are aware, like IBM, Microsoft are leading companies that are filing such kind of patents. I would also like to share what Mr. Agarwal said. This is a very interesting AI invented patent that I read in one of the news that which was again, it was a part of IBM. So this was an AI invented perfume which will go on sale in about 4,000 locations in Brazil, known as Simrise. So Simrise is a German fragrance company which has clients with Avon and Coty, and they struck a deal with IBM to see how its AI tools could be used to modernize the process. And IBM created an algorithm named as Filra that studies the fragrance formula and customer data and then spit out new perfumes inspired by those training materials. So creating a fine fragrance required a precision and even a slightest change in the amount of an ingredient can make or break a new perfume. So this is why Filra was developed with a data-driven approach and relying on a database of hundreds of thousands of fragrance formula, what Nirupam mentioned, raw fragrance materials and all the data that they could collect. Filra, again, it uses machine learning to generate new scent combination. So this AI system, Filra, applied in creating such flavors and flavors. So I see that I think in coming years, we would see more of patent filing in these technology, especially on machine learning and deep learning. So this is what I have noticed, but I would be interested to know even from you and Richa, like what are the technology that you have noticed in India when it comes to patent filing?
Richa, let's have your views on this.
Well,
some experiences, yes.
Unfortunately, machine learning and AI, though I feel that this is something that we should, as Indians, focus more upon, considering it's our forte. We don't. We don't. Unfortunately, we don't. Our areas would be more to do with chemicals. We'd have lot of chemicals. We'd have a lot of mechanical inventions. We have pharmaceuticals, but then again, limitedly so. But let's face it, actually, patent came into its own from the year 2005. So from 2005, we are sitting into 2021. 15 years is not a very long time period. You cannot actually expect that a lot of precedents will be set in 15 years. But yes, from what happened in 2005 till what has happened today, the number of applications has gone up in these areas as well, which is really nice. One incident which I'd like to mention, it was actually very surprising. I was, during this entire lockdown period, I was involved with IIM Bangalore. They were having this session called WSP, which is Women's Startup Program. And it was in collusion with NRSCEL. So the three of them, that was Swayam and IIM Bangalore and NRSCEL. So they had run this program called Women in Startup. And this was the first year that they could do it virtually. I mean, there was no point. They couldn't do it physically. So they did it virtually this time. And it's classes, it's proper classes. And for the first time, there were 10,000 women who registered, which was significantly more than what could have been.
What was the duration?
It's not a very long course. It takes about 2.5 months to 3 months. Mm-hmm. But it's a intensive program. So they have these, classes, they have their assessments, they have business ideas, they have the lean canvas models. And it's not an easy thing, but for the first time, 10,000 women registered, which was unheard of. It's just not possible. And they could do so because for women, being one myself, I know it's a difficult deal, no matter how we want to change it. But the point is, for women, it's difficult to leave her home, her children, her husband, and move to Bangalore for a period of 3 months. To leave your job for a period of 3 months. You can't do that. So it was so much, I mean, this was one example I felt which really worked wonders for women. It worked to their advantage. And
COVID is a blessing.
Sorry?
COVID-19 is a blessing.
In a certain way it was. And to answer Kavitha's question, a lot of women there were involved. Normally when you talk about women's startup, you think that they are going to be dealing with jewelry, clothes, and food. But substantively more than that, we're dealing with solar power. They were dealing with hydroponics techniques. They were dealing with biotechnology, and it was a spectacular event. It was amazing to be part of it.
That's wonderful. That's great, Richa.
I think Mr. Anand would be able to throw more light on that.
So tell me,
can you, Kavitha, Richa, can you please share some of those startups cases which can be exemplary for many more women in the country as a source of
I could connect them. I could definitely connect them. I'm still connected with most of them. So I'd be more than happy to connect them.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
But the recordings, are they on a website which could be viewed, like a YouTube or something, or any other platform where they could be viewed today by Mr. Agarwal, myself, and some of the...
No, I'm afraid not. There were specific recordings which were given for the candidates. You had to view, you had to obviously log into the NRSCL Swayam website, right. And then there were proper classes. And so you had to attend those classes, then you had to take the assessments, and I was alone.
What you're saying is you had to be a woman to get that education.
Surprisingly, you are right.
That's a gender bias.
Apparently, I have heard.
I mean, I want that education, but I can't get it.
No, sir. But, apparently, from what I have heard, this is again hearsay, so you cannot quote me on that. But I've heard the similar program for men is also available. However, for women, it's free. For men, you have to pay 12 lakhs.
This is getting recorded, so you have been quoted now.
Have you noticed how quiet Dr. Agarwal is?
So honestly, it's a good idea to be a woman in this age. It was really nice.
Yes, it is, absolutely. It's
Sir,
what you're telling us.
there is a question. The querist has said that this is not relevant to the session topic, but if you can, please share your thoughts on the way IPAB orders are being set aside and revoked, patents reinstated, especially pharma matters. So, if the panelists or if, with the due permission of Ms. Pravin Anand, can we take up this question or we can skip it?
No, we can certainly take it up.
All right. So,
yeah.
So this question has been raised by one of the participants, Abhijit Gandhi.
Okay, so the simple answer is that IPAB orders are not being set aside. That's factually incorrect. And I know because since he's talking about pharma, I have direct experience of a lot of IPAB orders which have gone in favor of one party, but they've not been set aside by the court. In fact, they've been upheld by the court in writ petitions filed in the High Court.
Good.
Maybe there's some stray order which he's experienced and has come across. Maybe that's an order, but generally that's not true. IPAB orders are being upheld as very reasonable, strong orders because IPAB, as you know, not only has a legal component in the form of a retired judge, but also has a technical component, a technical member. And so both of them together form a very good team. And some people would say that that team is ideally suited to crack a technical problem and understand the subject matter of a patent.
That's right.
So there was a time in between when IPAB was a little dysfunctional because of lack of appointments of one of those two components. But from the time, I think 2019 onwards, the IPAB has done fantastic work with huge amounts of disposal. And that's why the legal community today, when there was a talk about abolishing the IPAB, the legal community today got together and are almost unanimous. I haven't seen a dissenting voice on that as yet, to say that IPAB is one of the pillars of our justice delivery system, and you can't take away that pillar.
Good, very good. So, any more question from any audience?
So there's one more question there.
No, there's no more question. There's nothing visible. If you can read out, I don't think that.
Sure. So let me read. So the question is, Mr. Anand, would you like to?
I can't read it, so why don't you?
The question is, what are the new business model strategies companies are coming with in automotive and hospitality sectors after the pandemic?
I think that's an excellent question, and maybe the automotive part you should deal with because you have a hero background, and that's got strong automotive links. So why don't you tell us about that? And the other component was hospitality. Hospitality, maybe any of our other panelists can take.
Sure. So in terms of automotive, one thing which was a bit surprise to the industry itself, because when the lockdowns came in, people were not moving around. Essentially, the cars were standing in place for 3 months and 6 months, not really moving. People thought, why do we have these investment in cars? Because if we are not going to use them, this is a problem. And same way the industry felt that this is a challenge because people are now not going to be working from home and other things. So the demand will come down. What actually happened was the reverse. So because what was earlier being people were very bullish about was the sharing economy. So the Uber, Olas, etc., and the metros and the buses, public transport in that sense, these all were suddenly, people became very scared of because they obviously had the fear of contracting virus if they are going in a public transport or if they are going in a transport vehicle which is shared. So the movement became towards more personalized transport. So instead of a shared transportation, people wanted their own transportation, and hence in this case, actually the two-wheeler sales skyrocketed. And similar thing happened for the 4-wheelers, but 2-wheelers were essentially people, affordability was a big factor in India, so it actually skyrocketed. From a future perspective, what I see is a lot more focus coming towards both electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles, because a lot of people who still can't say drive. So if once the autonomous vehicles become more market ready, a lot of old people or women or children to some extent would be very happy to leverage autonomous technology to take care of it, and the electric vehicles essentially primarily to balance out against the fossil fuel fluctuations, as we have seen the oil prices going up, and only last 2 days the oil prices have not gone up or come down rather because of elections. So if that is way things are going to work, and the OPEC is continuously reducing the capacity and production, so this is a bit of a challenge, and so both of these will remain. We also see a lot of financial structuring around EMIs and things, but I think that is not new. But more and more people will adopt that. So that's what I see from the automotive sector.
Now, what do you think? The AVs have already come into the market?
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
The AVs have come into the market? EVs are there.
Yes.
Electrical vehicles we are seeing in the market, but AVs, automotive vehicles, are they in the market?
Not yet. Not yet. So we are in Indian market, limited trials happening with the automotive majors, and we are thinking once the Tesla comes in, the competition will heat up further, because Tesla is slated to come in, and Tesla is also working on autonomous vehicles, not just EV. So they have the technology and they are working superbly on that. So once that thing happens, we will see a lot of other players also taking it very, very seriously.
And just to add,
I think our pedestrians will have to be a lot more disciplined, because if they look left and walk right, the vehicle won't be able to read that.
right.
As you know, AI, they've discovered autonomous vehicles. They've failed in predicting two people talking on the road. Are they going to cross the road, or are they just talking? And not looking in the right direction, they've not been able to predict that accurately. And there have been some road accidents as a result of that. So with Indian pedestrians, there will be a little bit of a challenge.
Nirupam, as you mentioned about the writing of the book through GPT or something, as you said. Now, GIPC is looking for, publishing, because we have a lot of, publication material, resource material since 2009. So even on AI, we have a lot of material. And so is there a way we could take help of this software and compile the information and the data for making in the form of book?
Absolutely. Since, as I said, this the model is publicly available. Only thing I would add is that the model which is publicly available is a fraction of the original model. Okay, so it's not as powerful as the original model, because original model is too powerful, because then they felt it is crazy, so they did not release the original model. But the overall, even the fractional model is very, very powerful. So
what is the full name?
GPT-3. Yeah, so GIPC and syncs with GPT-3 very well.
We will need your help, but you see what has happened over the years. We have a lot of resource material, very rich quality of resource material on the pharma patenting, on the artificial intelligence, and several other issues. So we have been, thinking about how we can do it. Well, we will take due permission from all the authors and whoever has presented their papers. But that could be a good resource material for the, all the.
Absolutely, and I think this is the right forum to be a pathbreaker in India, because I go back to Mr. Anand's comment when he was making on the 5G technology, and he was wondering when India will do it. So my humble submission is that, I have a technical background. So in 1998, 97, 98. I was working on technology which was satellite communications, mobile communication, which now Starlink, Elon Musk and Facebook both are launching it. So I was at that time working in India with a company called Yug Software Systems in Gurgaon. And we were developing. So it's actually Indian talent, but it's the name of the technology goes into a Western world, or now with Chinese, Japanese, and Koreans. So the talent is in Indian talent is not behind anybody. Only thing is Indian investor needs to invest in it, and that's the problem. So Indian investor is sometimes not so bullish on technology than other people are, and that's where the problem is.
Now, we've got 1 minute left, so if you allow me, I would like to say something which is precisely the thought that Nirupam has referred, which is that as a country, I think it's important for us to think big. If you see the Great Wall of China, it's something that causes a lot of heart pain to be told that from the moon you can see the Great Wall of China. Obviously, you can't see the Taj Mahal from the moon, but it's not only a physical product like that. If you see their patents, over 1 million patents, as opposed to 45,000 patents in India. Why? That's probably because our corporates, as of now, don't have that culture that we've got to apply. We've got to have a filing of patents as a target and working backwards and researching. Because once you get into the game of filing patents, then you realize that you need to research to have proper subject matter which will get allowed. And that's when you start to play the game. You start to read other people's patents. You start to distinguish them. Then you start to link technologies, and your people get into the act of the game. And that's when I think we'll transition. As opposed to our 5-year planning, China's got 100 years planning. I mean, it's just that they think big. And I think it's important that we need to do that. And as regards, I think finally, most important thing is we need some more Indian Nobel Prizes. And I think the government really needs to go after that and push for researchers in this country so that we get, a couple of targets for at least 5 Nobel Prizes in the next 5 years.
So we are going to have the indigenous model of Nobel Prizes.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to say that, yeah.
In the name of Rabindranath Tagore, or in the name of, say, other person.
Absolutely, why not? We should. We've got to encourage creativity in this country and not to push it down.
Yeah.
That's very important.
So it has to be indigenous thoughts.
Because at the end of the day, it's only a small group of people who create. There's a whole world who enjoys their creative output and some middlemen in the middle who make a lot of money. But the creative people are very, very small and they need to be respected for what they do. That's very important, according to me. I think that's about all. I think we can wind up our session, Dr. Agarwal. We finished, I think, just on time.
But we had wonderful sessions throughout the day, and the whole day, this first experience of GIPC to organize this GIPC conference digitally. But today we could do it, and we had 3 plenary sessions, first on the AI, the second one on the pharma. Then we had Professor Heinz Godard, a special lecture on the German Patent Modernization Act, and finally this concluding the 3rd plenary session. So thanks a lot. And Mr. Pravin Anand, as usual, he has been always a very helping, source of inspiration, and always cooperate the IPC in organizing these conferences. So today we had Mr. Pravin Anand not only as a moderator but as a speaker. The theme of this plenary session 3 was impact of COVID-19 pandemic on innovation in business models, technology and IP. So thank you all, the speakers, Mr. Pravin Anand, Mr. Nirupam Srivastava, Richa, Pandey, and Kavitha. So I'm thankful and grateful to all of you for wonderful, enlightening all the participants. We had about 150 delegates And I think with this experience, GIPC, because this was just a a pilot run and just to get the first-hand experience, how does it go? But all the 4 sessions which we had, they were all lively, and we got very good quality of speakers. I hope the audience we are yet to get the feedback how they like it, but the kind of questions they have put and the kind of interactive sessions, and even it was just not a one way. There was a sort of panel discussions or in the real sense. Sometimes when we do it physically, the speakers don't get enough time. So this time, we got enough time and there was good amount of interaction. So the purpose of the discussion and the deliberation, that is really, I think, been done and in a very rightful manner. So with this, I thank you once again, and hopefully we will meet again during these 3-4 months, because we want to do it on monthly basis. So maybe the topic will change, but yes, our GIPC fraternity and the family, GIPC family, which I believe all of you belong to that family. So with your cooperation, we will keep on meeting digitally over the next few months, and then finally towards November we will have our GIPC physically. God permits that we can do it. The COVID-19 will not be a hurdle in doing that. So with these remarks, I once again convey my sincere and hearty thanks to all of you, to all the audiences, and with this we can conclude today's session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Agarwal, and thank you.